So for those of you who are tuning in later, we said this, I don't like Monday exams either, but it's unfortunate we have to go down that road. Your lab partner, she's gone. Okay. Okay. So we're all on the same page. The format that on Monday, these vocabulary terms, there are no orders on here, I don't believe. It's your vocabulary that was handed to you, like your teeth, baleen, cecum, rumen, echolocation, placenta. Those are some of the vocab terms that were handed back to you, okay? Also, don't forget some of this content that we have gone over, and it looks like, come on. Looks like this, okay? There's only one thing that we have left to go over, because what is it that mammals need? What is it that mammals need to have a very high metabolism? They have to have these two things all the time. Oxygen's one. Water. And that would be considered as nutrients, okay? So water and or nutrients. Okay? And then, so if it's going to be able to take in large amounts of nutrients, they have to have a very complex, so how do we absorb nutrients, even as humans? A complex what system to absorb nutrients? No. You're getting a little ahead of yourself. Okay? What is it, how do humans and mammals get all these nutrients? How do we absorb them? In a very complex what system? Go. Okay, so it's a digestive system. So then, once these nutrients are absorbed, how do they get from the intestines to the rest of the body? Magic. Circulatory system, which means there's a very complex pump that has how many chambers to it? 3. 4 chambers. Okay? Also have to have large amounts of oxygen. So then that ties into what we would talk about here. Did we have this talking about the circulatory system yesterday? No. So we got to do this one and this one. Then that's it. Okay. Now, not all mammals are the same as far as losing heat. Okay? What might be an example of this, losing heat through their mouth? Dogs is one. Okay? Bears might do that. What about the nose? Pigs do that. That's correct. Cattle, I don't believe so. I think they can sweat. Horses can sweat, so I'd be led to believe that cattle can too. So when we look at this, okay, so each side of a mammalian heart, if there's 4 chambers, what do you think you see on each side? 2 ventricles on one side, 2 atria on the other. You'd have to visualize that. They don't want confused by that question. Okay. I think maybe a little perhaps a little context to that would be beneficial. Okay. Okay, so very quickly. if this is the human and or mammalian heart, okay, that's not quite up to scale. But what does that tell you about the heart? We know that there's atria on top, ventricle on the bottom. Atria on top, ventricles on the bottom. So each side then consists of what? One atria and one ventricle. So when you say one of each, that's right. One atria and one ventricle. And the reason that this is such a complex pumping mechanism is because it has what we call a double circuit. It receives blood from the rest of the body. We all know that this is a human heart, no doubt. But there is a mammal that has a heart almost identical to that of humans. Take a guess. Not apes. Pigs. I don't know how much further down the road it would be. You can take a heart out of a pig and put it into a human. Of course, the problem with that is your own immune system would attack this. But the reason that this is such a complex pumping mechanism is because it receives blood from the rest of the body on this side of the heart. Then it will send blood to the lungs in what's called the pulmonary circuit. Because how many of you are lifeguards in here or training to be lifeguards? Can you? Okay. So what classes do you have to take? It's this three-letter term. Okay, so what's the C? Cardio. What's the P? That's the one you might not get. Pulmonary. Pulmonary, which means lungs, okay? And then resuscitation, okay? So the pulmonary portion means you're sending blood from this bottom chamber to the lungs. That's the pulmonary circuit. Then you receive blood from the lungs on this side of the heart and then pump it to the rest of the body in this bottom portion. This ventricle is the largest because it has to pump blood all throughout the body. This is just pumping blood to the lungs. This has to pump blood all the way up into the brain, all the way down to the feet. So that's why this chamber is so much larger. A double circuit, pulmonary and systemic. Just know that there's two circuits to this. All mammals have it. Doesn't matter if you're talking about human or a mammal, a double pulmonary circuit. Very complex pumping mechanism. Okay? Then we'll wrap this up with this. Okay? Okay, maybe you don't have to write anything for this. Yes? No?
It's too big short for this.
Okay. So, should you be coughing up mucus?
Yes.
What's that called?
Saliva.
You've heard of it, you just don't realize. You go to the doctor, he says, well, I'm going to prescribe this. What's that?
Flatulence.
No. Say that again, but a little louder. Bronchitis. So, what do you suppose is happening in this structure when you say bronchitis? It's inflamed, okay? In other words, you're having not necessarily just an infection in there, but it's probably some swelling in there as well, okay? So, another term might be if you have a type of fluid buildup around the fluid-filled sac around here. That would be pericarditis, okay? That just means an infection or an inflammation. If you have an inflammation of the liver, it's called hepatitis, okay? Because hepatic means it's Latin for liver. So anytime when you look at any type that means itis, it's going to be an inflammation in that area. So bronchitis means you're probably having an inflammation in there. Do we have any good artists in here? Or should we just... Go ahead. Well, only thing is that you're going to have to rely on this artistic ability because we can't film. That's what YouTube has for a stipulation. So let's see here. We'll just have to rely on this here. Okay, here is a mammal's trachea. Okay, then now you might think that that looks kind of silly, but that is accurate. Okay, now that just happens to be a coincidence, but because the heart sits right here, so typically what might happen is for some reason, if you shoved a penny down one of your brother's or sister's throat and they happen to inhale it, okay, it's perhaps going to go into the right lung because this is more vertical. So just gives just the internal anatomy would say, okay, we know where to look just because the heart is a little offset further to the left than it is to the right. Okay, then this really branches off. Of course, that would have to be open. That would have to be open. Okay, and then it perhaps would branch off even further. So if this is the trachea, I think you can visualize this in your head. No, it's just helping a supplement to hopefully help you with this. Okay, so the trachea is this structure. Okay, what would you guess that these large tubes are then? These are your bronchi. Okay, and one way to visualize this is once the leaves start to fill out on the trees again, picture a tree upside down. Okay, so this would be perhaps the trunk. Okay, and we talk about the bronchial tree. This is where, it's where it starts to branch. It's a good way of looking at that. Okay, so the bronchi, which includes the bronchial tree. Okay, so then these are your two bronchi, here and here. Okay, so then what do you suppose these smaller structures are then? These are your bronchioles. And then at the very terminal end here, alveoli. Okay, because what happens is if it is really, really dusty, we okay? Okay. If it is really, really dusty, okay, and if that is a very, very fine dust, that will make its way all the way down into the alveoli. That is not good if it makes it that far down. But typically, you have little tiny hairs in here called cilia. This is not on your exam. Mammals have it, humans have it as well. Anytime that gets agitated, these little tiny cilia then, once they start to move because there's something in there that does not belong in there, it causes you to cough. So why do you suppose this doesn't happen with air?
Because
Air is meant to be there. Air is not going to inflame this. It's not going to disturb it. It's when you have liquids down in there. In other words, if you're about ready to take a drink of that and your lab partner tells you something funny and you inhale and swallow at the same time, that means you could end up with some water down in there. That's your coughing reflex. Okay, That's about 15 minutes. For those of you who are just coming in now, it is vital that you take a few minutes Sunday, tomorrow. I know I don't like Monday exams either, but that's where we're at. It's been a tough winter, and it's put us in this predicament. Anything else? Okay, that's all I have, so tune in a little later. Look over these questions or this content and your vocabulary that you have.
Are you doing the bonus questions tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yes, bonus questions tomorrow. Okay, so rest of the time then is yours.